So changing the motor here, there's two belts on the motor. You got the first belt that goes to the tensioner, which would normally be here, the alternator, and the air conditioning compressor. There's a bolt on the bottom here for the air conditioning compressor that you actually have to remove without the K-frame being in the way. So when I pull the engine, I'll swap the air conditioner compressor. On this side, with the exhaust manifold, it's difficult to remove these two bolts down in here, so you got to do that with a wrench. Hopefully they're not too rusty. You also have to remove the exhaust, or actually not the exhaust manifold, the catalytic converter from the engine. You need to disconnect the axle support for this side here. A little hard to see, sorry. That's where the CV axle goes in. You do not need to disconnect the dog bone mount down there. That stays on the transmission. And I'm gonna have to take the starter out, which is up here. And I'm gonna start unbolting the torque converter and the transmission. And there's an access hole at the bottom of the engine, which I'll show you in a minute. So to get to the torque converter bolts, you just got to remove this little rubber plastic panel here, and it just has these plastic screws you got to take out. Alright, so I think Ford's just trying to play a crude joke on this. They put a screw head slot in there like it unscrews, but it just pulls out. They're not really threaded. Something I just wanted to point out here was this the crank position sensor, which is down in this hole. It's pretty hard to access. I did have the manifold and catalytic converter on it, and I was able to remove this, but if you're doing the engine swap, the whole engine harness stays right with the engine, so you can swap that out last. It's gonna be the last thing you actually do. I've got the oil filter adapter. I do need to convert that because the new engine has a cooler, which we do not need. I'm probably going to steal that sensor along with this oil pressure sensor, because I know that's a brand new sensor we just put on this vehicle. On this side here, I removed the starter. You got the Northeastern Mouse Hotel living in there. So we'll clean that up. On this side, you can see here better that this little dog bone here, that stays on the transmission, so that'll kind of help aid on keeping that there. There's also a little access port here. Don't quite know what that is, what that's there for yet. This was a little tough to remove those two bolts right here. They were tough to get out. I had to use two wrenches, and I got one of them trapped in there. So you might want to have two 13mm wrenches. And then I've just got to unbolt the axle from the engine and the torque converter still. And it should come right off. That transmission's blocked, so it shouldn't move. I think what I'm going to do is put the engine back on and leave the torque converter nuts or bolts loose or not even on, and then I'll put them on while I have it in the car. It'll be a little easier for me to get under there. I'll try to get them torqued. So to disconnect the bolts, I found out where my first bolt was, down underneath the car here for the access port or the motor. All right, and there's 3 bolts. They're 18mm heads, and you come up here, and what I did was when I found my bolt and centered it, I took a screwdriver and slid it in between the case and the flywheel teeths, or the flex plate teeth. And then I actually marked it, so when I come back to looking for them holes, lining up, I'll know where all the holes are. I'll know there's one gonna be straight down, and this red mark is, you know, where the hole is, you know, bottom dead center, I suppose, if you want to say that. And to get it to turn over, I just use an 18mm wrench on the front and a big long 1/2-inch drive, and I removed all the plugs so it'd be easier to spin, turn over. And this is probably actually it's probably easier to do it this way, just being that I can actually reach this screwdriver from under the car, and all I needed was a 3/8 ratchet. That's all it was to get, you know, enough torque on that bolt down there. So I'm gonna go ahead, remove that axle and the bolts for the transmission adapter there. Alright, so I'm about to pull the engine off the transmission here. Alright. Alone. Alright. So, I'm gonna chain it up. I got some clevises here. Nothing fancy. The motor's already got two spots where you can pull it from. We got it. I got to pull here. It's not going to hit anything. Should be all right. That should be that. Let me see if I can pry it away. It's stuck together since 2008, so I don't expect it to really come too easy. Oh yeah, it's loose. Alright. Tear it apart here. That's not good. Torque converter's staying with it. So I got the engine out, and I don't know why, but the torque converter is not coming off the flex plate. It's not bolted on. I think it's got like a pilot bearing, one of them rare occurrences with automatics. Don't know why they need one, but sometimes they do have one. Seen a Studebaker that had one. But there's a bushing inside that torque converter where it mates on one of the shafts, and I've buggered that up pretty good, so I'm going to talk to someone about that one. Or I might just have to put it back in. I don't know. I really don't want to do that. Alright, as I suspected, this has a pilot bearing. I don't know why. But it must have to do with aligning things. That's it right in here. It's not really a pilot bearing, it's more of just like a housing. It's where the pilot bearing would go on a standard, but the I really don't want to tip this guy too much here, but that nipple or whatever you want to call it fits in there, and there's rust. I just had to work that off with a couple screwdrivers. That's the bearing there. The teeth from that shaft there bugger that all up. So this is what your oil should not look like. Should not look like chocolate milk. So here's the bearing. I went down to my local Ford dealership and looked up the part, and you can't just get a bushing or bearing here. You got to buy a whole torque converter, unfortunately. So I'm left with just cleaning this bushing up. It's coming out all right. I'm just using this red Scotch-Brite. He told me to use, or actually the guy, technician down at Ford, told me to use steel wool. Don't use sandpaper. Hopefully that's all right. I don't really see why I can't, but I've got a couple little burrs there at the end of that little oil galley. So I'm just going to clean them up. Everything else pretty clean. I'll just stick it back on. Point here, I've got the replacement engine on. It went pretty well. I've got the torque converter bushing cleaned up. The motor, I've got the alignment pins in. Engine squished together. And honestly, from here on out, it's just reversal of removal. So I just gotta kind of install everything. I'm gonna see if I can replace the seal on that axle there, and start putting the manifolds and everything back on, and get the belts, get all your axle on there bolted, your manifold bolted on, so you can put this power steering pump on and get the belt on. All right. I just want to explain here, this is the power steering pump. This is a stretch type fit belt. And I bought a tool that was supposed to come with it here, and I have no clue on how to get this on here. And it just doesn't seem like this notch fits in anything. What I did was I just took a pair of vice grips. I got the belt on the damper first, and because there's a hole there, I just clamped it, and I just rotated the engine around, and it just popped on. Didn't do any damage to the belt. At the bottom here, I gripped it, and that'll be all right. It ain't gonna hurt nothing. I'm going to lift the car up with a chain hoist, set it down on the motor and the K-frame, and see if I can get it lined up and bolted. I got that left front axle out finally, and of course it just popped out like it was nothing. The ring for it was a little bent. I think that's what the issue was. But once it's in again, it shouldn't cause us any issues. And I think I am going to go ahead and replace the seal, but afterwards, because right now I can't really get a bucket in there to catch transmission fluid. Got to put the clean the rust up on that steering rack. Took me a long time. I got everything kind of in position. I got the bolts lined up for the two motor mounts and all 6 K-member bolts. It took me about an hour to get this figured out, and I just got the steering rack in position. It can only go in one way, so there's no need. You don't need to mark it or anything, which is really nice. I did put some anti-seize on this one because this one was rusted pretty good in case you just never know if you got to take it apart again. So I'm going to finish lowering it and bolting it up. I got a great big huge leak. I pulled the axle out, and that was kind of a mistake. I should have just left it in there, thinking I was going to fix the seal later. And I just got transmission fluid everywhere. So I'll finish up bolting, and I'll show you after we're done. She's all done. Burned like a kitten. A gallon and a half of antifreeze in there. I think we're gonna flush that out again and put the nice new antifreeze in there. Well, take it easy, and thanks for watching.